I am live. It is Saturday, the 4th of May 2024, and I'm starting a new book, again by Joan Grant, or Joan Marshall Grant. It was published in 1947, I think, or 49. 1949, first published. And this is actually her one and only novel, fiction. Because all her other books are reincarnational lives, where she describes as the person who lived. I've just finished Land of the Horizon, where she was Ra, a male. And here we are in The Laird and the Lady. It's in a romantic French chateau. The Laird meets his lady, an American millionaires traveling incognito to escape from fortune hunters. They fall in love, they elope, they spend an idyllic honeymoon in Paris. Now, there is a haunted castle. Stories of haunted houses are legion, but this one, instead of retreating into materialism or indulging in flattering credulity, provides a provocative account of how a ghost began and ended. Surely a most vital consideration for which of us is not in danger of joining their uneasy company. So these are short chapters, and I read them, these chapters, one by one. For Lucy Alice Beatty, Part 1. The Lady. Marylda woke reluctantly and did not open her eyes, for she was trying to recapture a confused but happy dream in which she had not been lonely. In a moment or two she would have to ring for coffee, then pack her overnight bag, pay the bill, and drive on alone to Paris. She was still as much alone as she had been at the end of the war. More alone, for then she had believed that by hiding her real identity she would find friends instead of the acquaintances of an heiress. What had nearly 2 years of hard work brought her? Nothing except an increasing sense of futility. In future she would sign checks and leave more efficient people to do the actual work of trying to help the starving children of Europe. Now she was on her way back to Grummy, her oldest trustee, would be really glad to see her, and even he would be relieved that her experiment had failed. Now she was on her way back to America to become the rich Miss Blenkinsop. Only Grummy, her oldest trustee, would be really glad to see her, and even he would be relieved that her experiment had failed. How long would it take her to reach Paris? She tried to remember the name of the place where she was spending the night. She had decided to drive until she was really tired, for then it would be easier to sleep. Her head ached. Surely she wasn't going to be ill again. Not that she had been really ill, but a bad bout of flu in Germany had made her accept Maisie's invitation to spend a month in the villa near Antibes, before going back to face the social racket she had tried to escape. Maisie had found it amusing to pass off her rich relation as someone who needed a free holiday and pretend that she had not even paid for the clothes Marylda was taking back with her on the Queen Mary. She turned over, and one of the pillows, square pillows with goffert's frills, slid off the bed and knocked over a carafe on the table beside it. Water spread into a pool on the carpet. Marylda stared at it. It's an embusson. How odd to find a real embusson in a hotel. She sat up and her head ached so much that it made her dizzy. She put her hand to her forehead and felt a wide strip of sticking plaster. How had she hurt her head? The cuff of the long-sleeved nightgown fell back from her wrist. How did she come to be wearing this extraordinary garment? How did she get here? This mature and beautiful room couldn't belong to an hotel. She lay back, trying to marshal her thoughts into orderly sequence. Bourgoin. You had dinner in Bourgoin, soup and cold chicken. There was no point in ordering anything interesting when you were eating alone. You intended to stay at Autun, but this certainly isn't the Hotel St. Louis. It was raining before you reached Macon, and the windscreen wiper wasn't working properly. Her efforts to remember were interrupted by a tap on the door, which opened before she could answer. A maid, her hair white as her lace-edged apron, her eyes black as her neat alpaca dress, brought in a breakfast tray. "Madame is feeling better after her sleep?" she inquired. "Yes, thank you," said Marylda, trying hard to remember how she came to be receiving this hospitality. She was relieved to find that she had not forgotten her French. The maid drew back the curtains and opened the shutters of one of the 3 tall windows. "Madame perhaps finds the light too strong. When the head has been hurt, it is not wise to strain the eyes." She smiled. "But I can assure Madame there will be no scar. I've had experience in these matters, otherwise I should have insisted on summoning the doctor last night in spite of Madame's protests." She arranged the curtains to her satisfaction, drew forward a screen so that there should be no suspicion of draught from the window she permitted to remain open. Then, from a dressing room she led from the right side of the room, she brought a brush and comb, hand mirror and powder bowl, and put them on the bedside table. They were of gold with an elaborate coat of arms, and Marylda wondered how she could discover most tactfully the name of her hostess. Judging from the nightdress, she must be old, and the coronet belonged to a marquise. "Madame la Marquise is very kind to take in a stranger. Will you please convey to her my profound thanks until I can give them in person?" "Did I forget to tell you last night that Madame was away in Morocco? When she comes home, she will say, 'Honorine, I trust you gave every hospitality to our English guest. She would be most distressed if you did not tell us everything you want. Madame is very fond of the English.'" Marylda was about to say she was American, but decided it would be wiser to reserve explanation until she remembered more. She lay back and watched her set of coffee jug, a plate of rolls, and a porcelain basket of strawberries on a table by the fireplace. Why not beside the bed? However, she had already been so attentive that it would be churlish to ask for more. Perhaps it was the custom of the house not to breakfast in bed. A pair of walnut armoires equal in the loop seemed oddly familiar until she realized she had seen their equal in the Louvre. The maid opened one of them and took out a rose-colored velvet bed jacket, which she draped around Marylda's shoulders. She stood back to regard the effect. "Madame is looking beautiful. A little pale, but it is only to be expected, and it is most becoming to one who has dark hair and so white a skin. I will tell Monsieur that in a moment you will be ready to receive him." She left the room before Marylda could think of a question that might give her a clue as to who Monsieur might be. Was he her host? Undoubtedly, for who else but one who obeyed a set of convention no longer in ordinary use would breakfast with an uninvited, though somewhat battered guest? The old noblesse probably clung to the tradition of social breakfasts, in memory of the spacious days when the king and queen summoned their courtiers to attend their toilet. What would the marquis be like? Would a footman in livery attend to pour the coffee? Or was it, in fact, chocolate, a more traditional beverage? Anyway, this was an adventure, and even breakfast with a bearded ancient was far more romantic than their petit déjeuner alone in an hotel. How grummy would have enjoyed finding himself in a museum and being the guest, even if uninvited, of one of the relics of a dying civilization. How fortunate that he had taught her about antique furniture. She would have a basis for conversation. She would have a basis for conversation, a chance to prove that some Americans had a knowledge of European culture for which they were seldom given credit. "Marylda," she said severely, "you are enjoying yourself for the first time in years. You are suffering from amnesia. You have got yourself into a highly equivocal situation, such as Mr. Gromit predicted, with all the pompous gloom of the traditional trustee. You are about to encounter a complete stranger. If he is not a complete stranger, the situation may be even more delicate. But instead of feeling the trepidation suitable to a virgin of 23 in a foreign land, you have no regrets except that a lipstick is not available. I wish you knew whether a moment really means an hour. Am I expected to let the coffee go cold, or is it presumed I breakfast before receiving visitors?" There was a knock on the door, which until then she had not noticed, for it betrayed its presence only by a narrow crack, which imperceptibly broke the pattern of poised shepherdess and ambitious shepherd that composed the wallpaper. She demanded a last hurried reassurance from the hand mirror and slid it under the pillow. "Entrez," she called. After all, it was possible, though unlikely, that her host could speak no English. The door opened. A very tall young man wearing a magnificent brocade dressing gown hesitated on the threshold. "I apologize for butting in like this," he said, "but they think you're my wife." This is the end of chapter 1, entitled The Lady. The next chapter 2 is The Laird.